Hello, my name's Martin Fish, and I'd like to welcome you to the very first episode of the Pots and Trowels podcast. And on each episode, we're going to be talking to lots of guests. We're going to give tips on seasonal jobs that you can be doing in your garden. We're going to have interviews from specialist growers and nurseries, ideas from Jill, how to put fresh produce to good use in the kitchen, lots of technical support from Sean, and I might even answer some gardening questions along the way. So loads and loads happening. And I've got Sean and Jill with me, so you could tell me what I'm going to be doing in the next episode. First of all, I suppose we ought to let people know what Pots and Trowels is, because although this is our first podcast, Pots and Trowels has been in existence in a different form for a while, hasn't it? Yeah, it has.
Yeah, a few years. I mean, 4 years ago, I think it is. 4.5 years ago, we started making Pots and Trowels videos on YouTube and on Facebook, and we've built up, there's a few thousand people watching them now. And for those who haven't seen the videos, Martin does an amazing job of showing you how to do things around the garden and chatting to people, and also giving us a little bit of a sort of, I don't know, behind the scenes glimpse at some gardens you might not always have the chance to be able to nosy around. So we make the videos. We've been making the videos, 4.5 years. I do some of the editing, Jill does the filming, Martin does the amazing gardening stuff, and they're available every week on YouTube, Facebook, wherever you like watching videos. How are you finding it filming them, Jill?
Oh, yeah, it's okay. Bit of a steep learning curve, because when we started off, it was at the beginning of lockdown. I had to take over the filming from you, Sean. So you've got all the gear, all the proper cameras. We just had an iPad. So, we had to start with an iPad. Now we've got a little bit better camera, so we do it with that now. But it's good fun.
It's good fun. And the good thing I like about it is we are very seasonal. You know, if the weather's not good, we can reflect that. And we're doing it as it is. You know, we are filming them and they are going onto the YouTube channel within a matter of a couple of days. So it is very, very to the point. And I think the podcast we're doing is sort of a natural progression of that. You know, we're gardening, and we can just get some slightly different things in this way. So I think it's going to be really, really exciting as we progress over the coming, I was going to say weeks, but it will be months and hopefully years.
Well, we'll keep doing it as long as people want to hear it. But I think that there's a natural kind of transition from, well, you used to do something on a Sunday morning, didn't you, Martin?
Yes, well, for 30 years on Sunday mornings, I've been doing local BBC radio. You
started it when you were really young.
I was only a child when I started, and I'm 30 years. Lots of changes in local radio. Things are changing. So sadly for me, that has come to an end. I've loved it. It's been a great experience. But one of the things that I really got out of it was giving people gardening advice. It would be answering questions and advice on what to do in the garden, and I miss doing that, or will miss doing that. So I think this is a really good way of getting that information across. And one of the things that we want is this to be interactive. We don't just want to be spouting about ourselves and what to do in the garden. We'd love you, the audience, to interact, and there will be a way that you can send us your gardening questions, any photographs, and we will answer some of those questions every week, just as if you're listening to a Sunday morning gardening programme.
Absolutely, and it's a natural progression. We're going to put these out on a Sunday morning, so you'll be able to, if your normal Sunday morning routine was listening to the gardening on the radio and then, I don't know, getting on with some jobs around the house or whatever, or being in the garden, then you'll be able to do that and listen to this podcast. Hopefully you will be able to send your questions in to Martin, and we'll get through as many of those as we can. But also we're going to have some interesting guests as well, hopefully, aren't we, Mark?
Yeah, we've already got quite a few lined up. One of the first, I haven't confirmed the date yet, but is Allett Anderson, which I'm sure lots and lots of people will know Allett from appearances on BBC Gardener's World and at the RHS flower shows. She's a lovely lady, Allett is, and we've had the pleasure, Jill and I, of working with her at several shows over the last few years. And in fact, it was Allett that and Sean is our technical lead on this, but Allett did sort of voice this to me, I think, when we were with her back in September at the Malvern Autumn Show, and she said, Martin, you should be doing doing a podcast, share some of your knowledge and experience. So really, sure, we ought to get a percentage, didn't she?
Yeah.
We ought to put her
hang
in.
Hang on, slow down.
So Allett very, very kindly agreed she said, if you do it, I will come on as your first guest.
Yeah.
So I will hold Allett to that.
Yeah.
So I need to get in touch with Allett. But yeah, we want to talk to obviously some nice celebrities, famous people, but there's so many people out there with a gardening story to tell, nurseries and garden owners, NGS people. So I think, we're going to be no shortage of people to interview for all the episodes.
Well, loads of the nursery growers because we do a lot of work at the flower shows, don't we, all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
So we get to know a lot of the nursery growers who have specialist plants that they are passionate about, and they love nothing more than chatting about them. So can we get some of them on as well?
Absolutely, yeah. We can do a mini masterclass because
Yeah.
what they don't know about their given subject isn't worth knowing, and you can't get that information anywhere else. So we have got access to all of that.
Eucharas,
carnivorous plants, fruit, flowers, veg, you name it, we can do it.
Yeah,
we can do a whole new podcast just on that alone, Sean. That'll keep.
That's worth mentioning, actually. It's a little bit of a plug for the videos, but we have got a masterclass playlist, haven't we, on YouTube that shows all those people we've talked to in the past, and hopefully if we can get them on here, it's a nice, relaxed atmosphere. We can have a good long chat about it, and we can learn a lot more. Talking of gardening content, we will have a couple of tips later on in this particular podcast. We've got a couple of things we're going to talk about gardening-wise. But first, I just thought it's worth kind of giving a bit of your background, Martin, and how did you get into gardening? And gosh, the long journey that it's been, because all TV shows have a journey these days. No such thing as a story; it's a journey.
Yeah.
How long is the podcast?
This could be a whole series in itself. Well, I'll do the shorter version if you like then. So, yes, I've been gardening all my working life. I left school at 16 and became a gardener, started as an apprentice on a parks department in Nottinghamshire. And I had a brilliant training. It was quite an old-fashioned parks department, but we made all our own compost. We grew in clay pots. We grew all the plants for the town hall and the mayor's parlour. It was absolutely a wonderful training. And I then went on to I went on to college, became a head gardener, and then eventually set up my own business. And we had a small nursery for a number of years. And it was while I was doing that I got into local radio 30 years ago and writing for gardening magazines at the same time. So they came very close together. And that, I suppose, then over the years just developed and took over more of the nursery, and the writing and the radio became more. And then I was very fortunate to get a lucky break and do some regional television. So I did in total about 12, 13 years on regional television, some for ITV, but mainly for the BBC. And that's when I met this chap, Sean, of course, because Sean used to work for the BBC and we met on gardening programmes. And then we work at shows now, still do the writing. We do our videos and lots of talks at shows. I judge at all the RHS shows. And first and foremost, I'm a gardener. We've moved house a year ago. We're creating a new garden from scratch, and we hope to follow that journey and the progress on the podcast. And that is it. I can't deny I'm a hands-on gardener. I'm never happier than when my hands are in the soil or talking to people about gardening. So, Sean, I've give a little link how we met. So, you're not a gardener, but you are quite a keen gardener. What is your background?
I've become more of a gardener from doing all of this, to be honest. Just going back, you just mentioned we met on the BBC, and I've just thought back, that was 2003, so that's 20 years ago. And I think the first gardening little sort of feature we worked on was a great, it was a vineyard in Nottinghamshire, which doesn't sound like a likely thing, but it was Eglantine Vineyard in Bunny in Nottinghamshire. And at the time, I wasn't that bothered about gardening, if I'm completely honest. I was in my 20s. I was like, gardening, and the last kind of, few years of working on pots and trowels and obviously working in my own garden, and lockdown was a big key thing to it, because you start thinking, I'm here a bit more, I'm around a bit more, I'm going to see what I can do. So try grow a few bits and pieces. So no, I've really got into it from a kind of skeptic to a convert. One thing I want to ask about your background, because you have given us the abridged version, and I think you don't talk about this as much as perhaps we should, but you do judging for the RHS, don't you? How do you get from being an apprentice gardener to judging for one of the premier kind of like horticultural organisations in the entire world. You know, the RHS is globally renowned, isn't it? How did that happen?
Well, I don't know exactly. I mean, I suppose there's a lot of luck thrown in there and probably being in the right place at the right time. I mean, I have judged at other shows, so I suppose you're seen judging at other shows. And for a number of years, I used to run the Harrogate spring and autumn shows, but I was actually doing judging before that. So I think it was just because I was judging at smaller shows, I was spotted by somebody from the RHS. They asked me if I would like to do the training, because you have to go through a training process to become a judge. And the judging I do, I've done both. I've done show garden judging, but I've also, my main judging is in the floral marquee. So when you look at, you know, the Chelsea coverage of the shows and you see the beautiful floral marquees with all these nursery exhibits, that's what I tend to judge. So that is what I do on a, you know, sort of a basis, right, a regular basis all the way through the summer. I'm now up to what we call a senior judge. So I'm a chair and a moderator. So I chair judging panels, and then we have a process of moderation to make sure all the judging is done fair and evenly. And I've been doing it now with the RHS for about, I was thinking about it the other day, it's about a good 10, 12 years, I suppose. And I'm really lucky. I consider it a great honour because, you know, we're a very small group of people that do this judging, and I look forward to it. It's something I really, really enjoy. It's all voluntary, but it's just great to be there at the Chelsea Flower Show on press day and all the other shows before the public are in, just to be surrounded by these amazing plants and flowers and displays. So yeah, I'm very lucky, and I would never have thought when I left school at 16 that one day I would be judging for the Royal Horticultural Society, or even talking into a microphone with you two now.
You've even judged in New Zealand, haven't you? We did a trip over there.
Yes, and that was because of the judging with the RHS. A friend of mine, daughter was running a show in New Zealand. We were judging at Tatton a few years ago, and he said, "Oh, go and visit my daughter." And it transpired that I got an invitation to be one of their international judges. So yes, I can truly say I am now an international flower show judge. So yeah,
fantastic. And one question I have to ask, because I've seen enough photos of you doing this: what's the bowler hat about? If for those of you who've not seen these photos, when Martin's judging, he wears this bowler hat. It's a black bowler hat. Do you have to wear that all judging, or is that specific shows?
No, well, that's an interesting story, because I've only started wearing it at the RHS this year, to be fair. I wear the bowler hat when I'm working at the Great Yorkshire Show, you know, probably the best agricultural show in the UK. I think I'm allowed to say that. And it's an amazing thing. And traditionally, if you're a chief steward, which I am, I steward the gardening show, then chief stewards traditionally wear a bowler hat. So I wear it at the Great Yorkshire Show with pride. Back to the RHS, especially the Chelsea Flower Show, which is the oldest of the RHS shows, traditionally the judges used to wear bowler hats going back, you know, sort of 30, 40, 50 years and more. And gradually that's died out. And there's only one judge now that wears a bowler hat, and that's Jim Buttress. And what we need to do is get Jim on the podcast one day, because he's got so many funny stories, and he's a great gardener and a brilliant judge, great character, who was in charge of the Royal Parks for many, many years. So we'll get Jim on for some of his stories and anecdotes. But Jim is the only one that wears a bowler, and I was chatting to him one day. He actually had been judging for us at the Great Yorkshire Show, and I said, "Do you mind if anybody else wears the bowler at Chelsea?" And he said, "No, I'd love it, because, you know, when I go it will die out, so it'd be good to get a few judges." So this year 5 of us donned bowler hats at Chelsea. It went down very well. The president of the RHS, Keith Weed, had a chat with me afterwards, said, "Love the bowler hat." I thought I was going to get a telling off, but he actually said he loved the bowler hat. So I rolled it out at a couple of the other shows as well. So hopefully it will become a thing of the future, and chairs and some of the judges will wear them. Just nice to keep the traditions going, this type of thing.
I didn't realise the chief of the RHS, the president, was called Keith Weed. Is he really called Keith Weed?
He is called Keith Weed. Yeah. Really nice guy, yes. And obviously,
nobody's been trying to remove him. Nobody's been trying to remove him.
No, not at all. No.
What is a weed anyway? But anyway, that's a...
Don't go there. Don't go there. So I think, you know, you. How did you get into television, Sean?
Because I keep deftly avoiding that, don't I?
You do, don't you? We do. We met when we worked together. Then we had a break because, you left and I left doing that, and we got back together. But how initially did you get into working for the BBC and television?
It's quite a convoluted story, but to cut it right down, I did a degree in media production, and I think I'm probably one of the 0.001% of people who did that degree who actually work in media production. No, sorry. It's a very popular course doing media production. I was very lucky to get on this course, and I did stuff like radio and studio TV production and video making, and also some stuff to do with interactive things, which were brand new back in the mid-90s. Learning about, CD-ROMs and things that are now completely died out and don't exist anymore because we just use the internet for everything. But anyway, to cut a massively long story short, I fell into a job working in TV studios, and it was to do with software and technical stuff and all of this, but managed to step sideways into a job at the BBC, which was a gallery directing job. And again, it was 20 years ago because it was pretty much a few weeks or months before we did that first work together that I became a gallery director on regional news. So that means you're calling the shots in a literal sense, saying, we're going to this camera, that camera, telling the presenter when to start and stop speaking and all this sort of stuff. And because this was a shift job and you're working on bulletins sometimes at 6 o'clock in the morning, sometimes at 10 o'clock at night, they used to give you a little kind of the carrot, the fun thing to do in between, which was occasionally you could go out with a crew of a camera operator and film something fun like gardens, and so this is where we end up converging, because I got to work with Martin and with John Sterland, who hopefully again we'll get on the podcast. Doing. Well, it was called something different every year, but something like Over the Garden Hedge, or
through the
Up the
garden
Path,
gate,
or
yes.
Through the Garden Gate. All these very originally titled little series, which would be a 2 or 3 minutes, and it got shorter and shorter as time went on. But 2 or 3 minutes on maybe a Thursday or Friday night on the regional news show, and it was the best fun ever. You'd get to spend half a day to a day out filming with Martin and John, having an absolute brilliant laugh. I don't know why I'm talking about you in the third person, Martin, because you sound funny to me, but
I'm here.
He is there with you and John. We used to have an absolute ball, and I didn't get to do all of those. There were some of my colleagues who went out and did them, but I did a fair few. I was at the BBC about 8 years, and then left to be a freelancer, filming and editing and all this sort of stuff. And then we kind of bumped into each other on a film shoot for our great friends over at Cobra Garden. They booked me by some tangential kind of connection through the BBC. Oh, this guy does filming, and by the way, we've got this guy who does gardening, and they booked us both to about 10 years ago to show off some of their mowers, and
that was it. Great reunion, wasn't it?
Somehow for 5 years we talked about doing some YouTube videos, and then eventually we started making YouTube videos, didn't we? And that was about 4 years ago. So that
was good.
Hopefully and it brings us back together. Yeah,
absolutely, yes. And then Jill, we've got to talk to you, Jill, because we don't see you on camera very often. We hear you because you sometimes tell me off when you're filming and just give me a little bit of direction. But you're not a gardener, but you are a very good gardener. You're not a gardener by profession. So just give us a little bit about I know it because I'm married to you, but for the people listening to this podcast, just give us a little bit about your backstory.
Well, the dim and distant past. I was an infant school teacher, and then got involved with you.
That's how she can keep us under control, because she's got those crowd control skills.
I have those techniques still. So got a bit more into gardening. I'd always had an interest in gardening, but a bit like Sean, really. It was just something that you did. And then got more involved with gardening and worked with you a lot more. And then, because we'd got 3 children between us, and you'd already got quite a large fruit and veg plot. So I was suddenly being inundated with all this fruit and veg and thinking, oh my goodness, I was just used to going to the supermarket or the market and getting what I needed. So really, that's where my the development of all my recipes came from, because I do love cooking. I mean, I always have loved cooking, but I was getting so much fruit and veg that I really needed to start doing it on a bigger scale, and freezing and preserving, making jams and chutneys, and really making the most of everything that came out of the veg plot. So that's where I started to develop some of my new skills, which has been great fun, and just compiling loads of recipes, because I do a bit of writing for some magazines now, and doing some regular cookery features in magazines. So yeah, when we're at the shows together, we do some cooking on stage as well, don't we?
Yes,
which is great fun.
As well as judging at the flower shows, we have a mobile stage unit that we take to about 10, 12 events a year, and part of it is you doing a live cookery demo. I talk about the grain of the fruit and veg, and you cook there on the stage. So it all comes together really well.
But it's always about how to do something quite quickly. A lot of my recipes aren't long-winded. They don't take ages to do, because when you've got 3 children, you need to get something on the table pretty quickly, and it's in from the veg plot and onto the table as soon as possible. So really, a lot of what we do is all about those fresh flavours and making the most of it.
And in between that, you are a very good gardener as well. I mean, over the years we've created several gardens. This is the third.
So it's like that's the first time you've heard that said. Is that the first time you've heard that said?
Yeah. But yeah, we're on garden number 3 together now. You know, we've been together nearly 30 years, and you are a very good gardener.
Yeah, but I'm not allowed to mow.
I've taught you well.
You are a bit precious about the lawn.
I am,
mowing.
But you are still, you know, when it comes to the setting out, tidying, sorting it out, you are very good. You're my right hand woman in the garden.
And an edger.
Exactly. So yes, and you know, just going back quickly to the cooking, one of the things we want to do as part of our podcast is now and again, can we get you in just to give us some tips on if you're digging butternut squashes, or you've got a glut of runner beans or beetroot, can we get you to...
All through the year, because there's something different coming out of the veg plot. Even in the winter, we've still got some things to do with parsnips, leeks, chard, all those sorts of veg, but then in the summer we've just got everything coming out of the veg plot. So yeah, no, that'd be good. That's
brilliant. So good. Fabulous. So that's some. I can put that in. That's a little.
Add that in the list. Yeah, we'll definitely we'll get
with tastings as well.
Top tips. I'm not going to be able to taste it if we're doing this remotely, just so people know I'm not literally in the same room as Martin.
You'll have to come across on the day we're doing the cooking, Sean.
I have a little thing to show / ask you about. So can you hear it? I don't know.
Not really.
So this is a little bit rustly.
Okay, so it's a bag of alpaca beans. Are you aware of alpaca beans?
Beans.
Not alpaca
Yeah, alpaca
poo.
beans.
Alpaca
It
beans.
is alpaca poo. It is alpaca poo, but they call it alpaca beans.
Just to make it sound a bit nicer. Does it
Some
smell?
people call it black gold. It doesn't smell.
Okay.
This is probably one of the most appealing things about it, is it doesn't smell. It's very valuable. Gardeners apparently really, really like this. I can tell you some of the facts that I've gleaned from looking it up on the internet. It has balanced levels of plant nutrients, nitrogen and potassium, low organic content and nitrogen levels. So basically it's not acidic and it doesn't smell.
Okay.
Right.
And
so this has been dried. This has been dried. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's laid out to dry. They're little pellets, a bit like rabbit droppings, I suppose, is the best way to describe them. I'm going to send you this, and then perhaps you can try it in the garden and see what happens.
Yeah.
So when it rains, if it's on the garden and it rains, does it go back?
I presume
into
it just
proper
dissolves
poo?
and moistens up, and as it does, Sean is now taking it out of the bag, and they do look like little coffee beans. I can understand that yes, they do. Like it's like deer poo, isn't it? Really, if anybody knows.
Yeah, deer poo. That's
deer
a good.
poo. And is there an aroma with it?
No, it doesn't smell. Well, it smells of something, but it doesn't
Might do
smell.
when it gets wet.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't smell of anything bad. It just. So basically, well, from what I understand, the alpaca are ruminating animals, a bit like a cow, and their stomachs basically. This is very non-technical, and feel free to look this up and correct me, anyone who's listening. Apparently, they deal with all of the bacteria, get rid of it all inside their system, and by the time this comes out, it's been so carefully kind of sifted through by their system that yeah, it's just the goodness in theory. So it says here, this has got label on it saying some things you can do. You can mix it with compost when potting house plants or outdoor containers. You can make a tea by mixing it with some water, or you can use it to mulch your bonsai trees. They will love it, apparently.
There you go.
Apparently,
Okay.
this goes well for quite a lot of money on eBay, apparently. So I'm told.
So what we need to do is find somebody that's got some alpacas locally.
Does it say what quantity you use? Because you've just got a little sack full there, haven't you? A little pouch.
Good question, Jill. And like anyone who's interested in recipes, you're absolutely right to wonder about how much to put in. I have no idea.
Okay.
I mean, I just got sold this stuff by an alpaca bean salesperson. A bit like like some kind of fairy tale. Anyway, I'm going to send that to you. You can try it, and then perhaps we'll have a future episode where we find out what happens with alpaca. This came from Oak Tree Alpacas in Woodbury in Nottinghamshire.
Oh, right, Nottinghamshire.
Yeah, Nottinghamshire, this particular one. But they're all over, and every time you search alpaca beans, you find alpaca people from all around the world. Trying to tell you how good these things are. I mean, I don't know if there's like is there a reality in this, or is this just alpaca people trying to? Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's going to be nutritional value in it. I mean, any manure out of an animal has nutritional value, and it's not a big bulky organic matter because there's no straw or anything with it, but it's going to add a bit of organic matter to the soil. So, it can only do good if you put it on the soil. And we'll swap you that bag for when you come, and you can make a beetroot and chocolate cake.
Okay,
that's a good swap.
That's fine. So now is the time to be adding things to your soil? Is it the right sort of time now?
Oh, leading on
nice.
nice.
I love that. It's a segue. Welcome to the podcast, everybody. Here's a segue from alpaca beans into a top tips.
I'm just thinking, because we've got some raised veg beds, haven't we? And they're looking sort of half empty now.
Yeah,
so is it
clearing
time
the
to put something on them?
Absolutely. Yes. No, it is. I mean, autumn is traditionally when you would often put some organic matter, mulch, if you can get well-rotted manure from a farm, or if you've made your own homemade garden compost from all the vegetable and garden waste through the year that's now decomposed. It's a great time to get that onto your borders, whether it's a vegetable garden, around fruit bushes, around your perennials. Basically, what we want to do is cover the surface of the soil with it if you can, and it will do various things. Get rid of the weeds first, so we want to put it onto bare ground rather than weedy ground. And what it will do over the autumn and the winter, any nutrients that are in there will then go down into the soil, so it's helping to build up the soil fertility for next year. But also the organic matter, the bulky part of that plant waste that's rotted down or manure, is then improving the soil structure, and that will aid drainage. If you've got a clay soil, it sort of opens it up, and it's the worms that pull it down into the soil. But if you've got a very light sandy soil, it adds a bit more body to it, as it were, and it will help it retain moisture next year. So regardless of what soil you've got, the addition of a mulch or organic matter at this time of the year is going to improve your soil long term for next year's crop. So if you've got some in a compost bin, then when the weather's fine, a nice dry day, and it's not too wet and soggy underfoot, get out and do it. But it's also great time to start a new compost heap. So if you haven't got a compost heap, start one now. And it can be as simple as a plastic bin that you buy from a DIY store or a garden centre, or a few pallets in the corner of your allotment, or some netting, and anything you're getting out the garden. So we're still cutting the grass because it's growing. We're going to be cutting perennials and things down. There's all that old vegetable waste. We've still got, our beans and veg waste to clear from the garden. All the fallen leaves that are going to start coming down in huge amounts very soon. Mix that all together, stick it in your compost heap or bin, and that will work happily over the winter months. So next year you'll have compost to go back on your garden. So don't throw it away. Don't put it in the bins to go to the council. Use it, because it is so valuable to improve our garden soil.
But is this the stuff that you would put in the council bin, isn't there? You wouldn't put everything in. You
No, if we've got
so...
anything really, really woody or it's diseased, then yes, or perennial roots, I would put in, from weeds. If you've got the perennial roots that are going to grow, I would put those in the bin that goes to the council. But anything that will rot down, save it and put it to good use.
Just to kind of throw in there, we have a green composting bin that also goes to the council. But so you meaning kind of the dustbin for some of those diseased things, right?
Yes, I do. Yes, to clarify, Sean. Yes, the compost bin is to make the compost. That is like a waste bin, isn't it? Absolutely.
And just on a point there, because after 4 years of doing Pots and Trowels videos and learning from you, and also looking at some of the comments and questions that come in, obviously this is a global platform. So at the moment, just to clarify, it's late October here in the UK. So we're kind of mid-autumn, would you say? I don't know.
Yeah, we're mid-autumn. Yeah,
the leaves are just starting to fall, aren't they?
We're based in Lincolnshire, which is sort of the middle of the country on the east side. We've had it quite wet and mild of late, to be fair. But yeah, we're getting into some colder weather soon, I would think, Sean. But yes, good point. So that's the.
I did try to help somebody with a response to a question about one of our. I think it might have been a hydrangea video, our most popular Pots and Trowels video, and it said something like, "What time of year?" And I said, "Oh, March." And he said, "I am in Australia." I was like, maybe not March then. Spring.
Exactly. Yes, so we are UK based, but we'll give tips to anybody around the world. So
anybody
to recap, then we've got the Pots and Trowels YouTube video channel, which you post something on there every Thursday, don't you, Sean? So they go out on a Thursday, but they're there forever. And of course, we'd love as many people to subscribe to that as possible. It's free. You just hit that button. And our new podcast, which is also Pots and Trowels, we're thinking this will launch early November.
Yeah, or early November. Well, if you're listening to this, you're already listening to it. So hopefully from now on in, these will become available on a Sunday morning, but obviously to listen to whenever you want. With podcasts, it's like catch up, isn't it? So you can just, I don't know, listen to it on a Monday evening while you're taking the kids to Cubs, or you can, while you're doing the ironing. Anything you like, really. But yeah, Sunday mornings, these will be available.
Doing the ironing.
Exactly, yeah.
Putting the mulch on the beds.
And people can also follow us on Facebook, X, which was Twitter. And have we got Instagram? I should know these things, but you're technical, not me.
We have got Instagram. Yeah, we have got Instagram. I mean, basically, if you've got questions to ask that we'll try and get to on the podcast or, respond to, then put them on any of these places, wherever you're happy. If you're on Facebook and you like making comments on Facebook, do that. Put a comment on a YouTube video. Just ask the question anywhere that's convenient for you, and we'll get it on the podcast and, put it in front of Martin and try and bamboozle him.
Brilliant. So we'll see, I won't see you, but hopefully you'll join us all for our next episode of Pots and Trowels coming your way soon.
Watch the videos on YouTube or Facebook, follow us on Instagram, Twitter or X, and subscribe to the podcast and never miss a thing. For more information, go to potsandtrowels.com.